Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is having a good evening. How is my volume? I want to make sure that I'm not blowing anybody's ears out or I'm not too quiet. Although I have to say, you know, these two cases we're going to talk about tonight, I'm a bit somber. So if you hear anything in my voice, I'm fine. It's not me. It's just the cases. As the thumbnail said, 27 years these cases have been out there and unsolved. And I think of the families involved. And I think of the frustration of all involved in law enforcement, the families, the friends, the series, the doubt. The longer it goes on, the more we have conspiracy theories and false leads and people inserting themselves. And at the final end of it, 27 years later, well, today, I'm not going to tell you that we have justice or a satisfactory resolution to either case. And I guess that's the tone in my voice that you hear. So don't be concerned. I mean, some of this needs to be, talked about. But then again, it is a bit somber. It is a bit somber. So now we're going to get down to business. Before I bring up the presentation, there goes the banner. Yay. Thank you, banner, for working. Hello, Fishnet, and welcome, Mrs. Cassandra. I just stopped typing. So I'll just be announcing as people come in. So now there are two listed on the thumbnail, and I don't usually put the names on the thumbnails, but I think that you could tell from the thumbnail of the stream that we're going to be talking about Jon Benet Ramsey and Tupak Shakur. Now, big news lately in Tupac, and also quite a bit of drama surrounding Jon Benet Ramsey also. But I'm going to leave it up to the chat. Those of you that got here early enough in the beginning of the stream, you get to tell me which one you want to go for first. So just put Tupac or Jon Benet or initials or anything you want, and then I'll go with everyone first. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody for being here. Thank everybody who listens later. It was a very, very busy week coming up, and hopefully you won't get tired of hearing my voice. But I did got quite a bit on quite a few of the cases, little stragglers here and there. Tomorrow, though, we will be updating the latest hearings in the mostly in the lawsuits in New York against ex-President Donald J. Trump. Some of those legal cases I am reporting on, so it'll be done a little earlier than tonight, very much earlier than tonight. For me on the East Coast here, this is 9 o'clock at night, and I intend to do tomorrow's political stream on a Wednesday, much earlier in the day, sometime between 3 and 6. I haven't decided yet. I'll be putting it up later, but it'll be a little before dinner or a little during dinner, so you can listen to it later. I don't expect people to get into that whole, political left versus right, red versus blue, or any of that. And we're going to be talking about the legalities of certain things, and what it actually means for, like the little hooks in precedents, not president, precedents. The legal term for, new ground and making a firm stance on something that's not been done before, or guiding the way. You know what I mean? So, that's how I look at it. These are never been really done before. We're going through new territory at all times, and I've been listening to everyone on it. And there's some fascinating little hooks in there that I think could use a little bit of a discussion and some helpful explanation to the layperson like myself, who just really can get drowned in all that legalese. So there you go. Hello, Wrecker. Nice to see you. Hey, Juju. So let's go on. I see all right. I'm looking at the voting. I see a Jon Benet, and I see two Tupacs. So see, it's only 3 of you voted, and there are 2 for Tupac. It looks like Tupac wins. So let me adjust the presentation and we'll start there. We will start there. And bring it up. I reintroduce you to Tupak Shakur. We all know 27 years ago. If you do not remember, if you're too young, he's on the rap scene. He was great. He was handsome. He was suave. He was also heavily, heavily gang related. And so was the whole industry at the time, to be honest, here in the United States. East Coast, West Coast, fighting all the time, guns, things, that. He was very good friends with Suge Knight, Marion Suge Knight, Death Row Records, right? Who's currently in prison for another crime. But not this. All right. It was 27 years ago in a car going to see a fight with his whole crew. Tupac and Suge were in a BMW in a white Cadillac pulled up with 4 people in it and shot Tupac Shakur in the chest. And he died 6 days later from the wound. Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? I'll bring up his picture at the very end of the stream for your record because he is that good. I will honor him. He was very good. And anyone who dies in the prime of their career, you know, and that in such a way, and then to have it unsolved for 27 years is a little rough. But there's more to this story, okay? Because it did involve people that all knew each other. There were rival gangs. Suge was pretty heavy into one gang, and there was Orlando Jones in some Mr. Davis, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Goes by the name of, I think it's Keefe D. I think I'm going to say Keefe D because it's Keefed. And if I mispronounce it, just know Bear ain't that cool. Okay. I do not know all of the ins and outs of this, and I will stand to be corrected if somebody knows how to say it better. Please educate me. Because when it comes to Mr. Davis, well, I hardly know anything and have never heard his name pronounced out loud that I can read of. No, not the actor Orlando Jones that I know of. Grace. I don't know if he's an actor, actually. I don't have that tidbit. And Beck, that's very interesting that you know the paramedics that worked the scene. He was really dead, huh? They didn't die 6 days later? Well, there you go. Because it's still be reporting that way, Beck, and it's still coming up in the documents that way. So this is interesting to me. Unless they brought him back, which they often do, but he did get shot right in the chest. They said it was traumatic, and they said he died of his wounds 6 days later. Well, he was really bad. Okay. I would admit he really was. I mean, it was right to the chest. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Yeah. Thank you for the clarification because, I'm, it's a horrible way to go. And what's even worse is that for 27 years, okay, well, Mr. Davis himself has been putting out books and putting out statements that he was in the car, okay, and that he did buy it, the latest book, which is Compton. I mean, everybody knows, straight out of Compton, right? Compton, biggest in the music scene for rap at that time and what was going on. It's tough, tough, tough area. I mean, I'm not from there, but I can tell you, you say Compton, it means rough. It's a tough life, okay? And it's not unusual for someone to buy a gun to protect themselves. It's not unusual to have beefs between rivaling friends and gangs and all of this. It was a heavily saturated area of violence, and the only way that they actually solved anything was fisticuffs or gun. Okay. And unfortunately, that's the common take on the whole thing. I'm all the way over here on the East Coast, and it's just how it gets thought of. Okay, now I'm not trying to be judgmental or anything, but it was rough. And so, like, they went to see a fight, the whole group of them, and then they ran across Orlando Jones and some of his people. in the lobby of, I think it was the hotel, and they're going to the elevator. And they do have video footage, which I have seen myself, of Tupac Shakur and Suge Knight beating up Orlando Jones, kicking him and pushing him around. And there's some altercation that went on. And it all got separated and they all left. Nobody was really, direly injured in that one. They all walked away from each other. But Chug and Tupac were in the BMW and the white Cadillac pulls up. There's 4 people in it. He gets shot in the chest. Now, speculation on who was in that vehicle has been going on for quite some time. But Mr. Davis, okay, and we're talking about Dwayne Davis here, Keefy D. Okay, let me get to the next picture. Let me introduce you to Dwayne Davis. Okay, this is not how he looked 27 years ago. This is kind of now his arrest photo and getting arrested, Keefy D. Now, he has put out a lot of documentation in his own words about what happened that night. He claims to have been in the white Cadillac. Okay, he has been arrested and charged with the murder. And yet, he doesn't say he pulled the trigger. He says he knows who pulled the trigger. Okay. Now, unfortunately, what's being reported is there were 2 people in the BMW and 4 people in the white Cadillac. And there's only 2 people still alive 27 years later. And that's Dwayne Davis from the Cadillac and Suge Knight. Marion Knight from the BMW. Now, Marion Knight is also in jail right now. And Marion Knight is putting out statements saying they got the wrong guy because he didn't kill him. He didn't pull the trigger. And Dwayne Davis is saying, I bought a gun. I was going after them and I was in the car, but I didn't kill him. Okay. Now he's saying he knows who did. And Suge Knight is saying he knows he did too. But Suge Knight is also doubling down and saying, I will never testify. I will never tell you. That's between, there's only 2 people who were in the car with me in the BMW that know, and that's me and Tupac can't tell you. And Dwayne Davis is getting arrested. But here's the thing. He didn't have to pull the trigger if they can prove he bought that gun to go after him. And that he knew what was going to happen. Because there are accessory rules and there are rules in regards to murder. He didn't stop it. He didn't prevent it. He actually aided and abetted it. Even if he just drove the car. Even if he just knew what was going to go on and he was in a passenger seat or in the back seat, he could be charged with this murder. And he can go down for it. Especially with the statements that he's been making. That he had full knowledge of everything that was going on. So those that are saying, oh, there's no evidence. Oh, there's no this. Oh, he didn't pull the trigger. When it comes to legal and the law, sometimes you don't need it. If you go by his own statements, he knew everything. So if he was blowing it up to be more important, that he knew all of this, and he didn't, well, he just got himself a murder rap. But I don't really understand why, after 27 years, this is going through. They must have a collaborating witness of some type, some statements from Dwayne Davis with other people to collaborate, because they couldn't go by just his statements, although he's been making quite a few for the 27 years. Yes, he has. And unfortunately, that goes against him greatly. It's all his own words really that are being used here for this case, but they must have found something because he's been talking like this for years and years. It's very disheartening for the family. I understand to know that somebody's out there saying they know everything, but they're not going to tell everything. He refuses to say who it was. No one is saying who, like they need to know the rest of the people in the car. Okay. And it's unfortunate. I know there's a code, and that's what they're operating on. And I'm not even going to pretend to understand why. It might not be what I do, but definitely they feel that they're following some kind of code by not saying. because even Suge Knight, in case you don't know who he is, there's Tupac on the outside and there's Mr. Davis on the other. Suge Knight in jail already. He can't be charged for anything. He didn't do anything. He was just in the car with Tupac when he got shot. Okay, he didn't suffer any problems with the things that happened at the hotel. Nothing really went forward with that. He says Suge Knight has made statements to say that he knows it wasn't Orlando Jones, the one who did get beat up in the hotel, who everyone is saying would have the most reason to go shoot somebody after getting a little bit of a beat down publicly in front of your girl and your crew and your friends. You know what I mean? Like the way things were going then and the way the story gets told, that would kind of give you really great motive. But both Suge Knight and Marion Davis are mum on the actual whether it was Orlando Jones or not. And at this point, I should actually mention that Davis is related to Orlando Jones. I believe it's his nephew. Uh, yes, Mousy. Suge did have a slight injury. He got winged. He got nicked. It was nothing. It was a graze. They said it was very minor. But yeah, he didn't get injured to the point. At least that's what I'm reading. But like I said, I don't have the original report. And 27 years later, I have to admit, I'm going to put a little disclaimer in here. 27 years later, everybody's saying it a little bit different than they did in the beginning. So without the original report, I'm not going to say that's a fact, but they're saying he just got winged. It was minor. It wasn't a big deal. Even Suge says it wasn't a big deal, but he's a pretty big guy. He could have took one to the shoulder and still said it was just nothing. I don't know. he is he's pretty tough. I, the whole thing seems to bother me with what I see in the reporting lately because, they fail to realize that all of this going down they don't need to have the murder weapon in this man's hand. They need means, motive, and knowledge that he was there. And you know what? He's given them everything in the publications of his books, in his interviews, all of it. Maybe not directly to them because they're not going to come forward with information for law enforcement. It's totally against what they're going to do. Okay. Hey, Paula, let me see. I see a question there from Rabbit, so I'm going to grab it because it actually says real question. So the real question, I want to see this. The real question is, why did the police take it lightly? Bangers killing bangers. Why did they take this so lightly? You know what? I guess because of the lack of people giving accurate information or cooperating. I don't want to say they don't care about the life. I think they knew that it was going to be fruitless. And I think after years and knowing the area and the situation, that could be the light, because I could actually see myself saying, why am I going to bother? Nobody's going to talk to me. Nobody's going to do it, but they still got to do their job. So a lot of times people say like they don't really care. I don't know if it's that they don't care. I think it's more like beating their head against the wall, don't you? I mean, think about that. 27 years later, his good friend dead, and Marion Suge Knight says, I ain't talking to them about this. I know what I know. I'm the only one that knows, and I ain't setting it right. I'm just telling you, you probably got the wrong guy. It ain't him. And I'll never say it was him because it was him. And that's frustrating because I think that, I'm sure he's doing what he thinks is right by his code. He's in jail for murder or during a hit and run, Juju, of all things. Yes. Suge Knight is in jail right now. For murder. But he is Dwayne Davis was the leader of a gang, the opposing gang to Suge Knight's gang that he was in at the time of the crime. Back then, Rabbits, you mean back then? Did they know? Did they care? Back then, they knew it was gang related. Things were hot back then. We're talking 1996, right? Like, things were hot. I don't know. Help me out here. Anybody that knows anything about the rap scene? I mean, Mousy, Wrecker, you all know these. would it be wrong for me to say that rappers were getting shot like every other day? Rappers were highly involved in the gangs. Okay, gang leaders were running some of the record companies and some of the production companies and stuff, and gang affiliation was not uncommon. It was more common than not. Rap at that time in 96 was entrenched with it in the lyrics, the attitude, in the whole mode. How do I know this? Because I didn't really want to listen to it that much, because it wasn't something I related to. Um, it was a totally different lifestyle, and it was very violent. And of course, it's not something, and there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely, that's not what I mean. I'm just meaning I couldn't relate to it because it wasn't my life itself wasn't like that. And although I would be curious as to what it's like for a life like that, or to know exactly what they're talking about, it's frustrating to listen to music and not understand what they're talking about. It made me feel kind of, out of, like, I felt very uncool. Listen, I just wasn't cool enough to get it. I'll admit it. I'm a nerd. I was doing other things, like I, but it was quite the violent scene. And everything I read about it does say that it was entrenched in that way. And I do agree, Anna, a little bit of both. I think back then, even they knew day in and day out people were getting shot, and they knew nobody was going to talk to them about it. People were getting shot every day. There were drive-bys constantly. And here on the East Coast too, we had our gangs, and it was happening every day. Drive-bys, violent crimes, whole groups of people getting mowed down over the name of some beef that we don't know anything about. Okay. And I can imagine, there were stuff like this and postings like this all over the internet. Rabbits is saying that, he knows that in his city, Shook wasn't allowed there for his own protection because he would have got shot. And this is how the gangs did it. They put out warnings, they talked to the big people, they made it known. And then if you went against it, well, fair game. That's what happened. In when you say that, I don't think that the law enforcement cared. I don't think it's I think they care enough for justice. They care enough for human life. But do they realize that it's kind of an impenetrable circle of silence? I think they're fully aware. And I think that they both sides bear some responsibility for that. Okay. And yes, there's all kinds of conspiracies. I hear you, Mrs. Cassandra is saying she had heard that it was something to do with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever Sean is calling, Mr. Sean Combs is calling himself now, because I know Sean Combs comes from New York. Actually, I know one of his teachers, actually related by marriage. Uh, MC Record says it was the media that caused the whole beef. There was no West versus East until the media pretended there was a competition which drove that stupid bloodbath. You know what? All you have to do is challenge if somebody's tough enough or the best, or bring out their competitive side. And that's what happens. That's what happens. Yep. Mousy says, I lived in East Point, Georgia, and it's a big area for Southside rappers. There was always talk about Biggie and Suge and Tupac. I remember it, and they were big and huge. They were big in the scene. It was a lot of talk. This was back in the late '90s. Yeah, Mousy. Like, well before. I am not Verillion in the mall. Okay, Verillion says, "See, Claire is in the vault." No, I'm not. No, I've just got telling everybody I didn't know that much about it because I'm a big nerd. You should have been here for that part of the talk. I am like, I felt like I don't know enough, but what I do know is the legalities of this. That the legality is that, unfortunately, and I'm going to go back to his picture. Sorry, Suge, taking you off the stream. No personal offense. There you go. Dwayne Davis, KPD. He's going to go down for this regardless of whether he actually pulled the trigger or not. And that's the legal way that it's done for murder, and the way he did. He said, Rapids, don't say I've got a problem with Shug now too, because like I can't take it. My heart, you're gonna give me like a panic attack. Like, don't, like, don't, just don't. Well, Dwayne Davis, and I'm not laughing about the predicament he's in because like he's gonna go for murder on this. Because he says he bought the gun with the full intent that they were going after Tupac for, you know, what they would call a shake up, because he can't act like that against his folks and his things. And, you know, it was his nephew they got beat up. They say Orlando Jones. No one will say Orlando Jones shot Tupac, but that happens to be a very big part of conspiracy talk. No one in the situation themselves is saying it. Shug, as I said before, refuses to talk, and Dwayne Davis is saying he's not the one who pulled the trigger, and he ain't going to say who did. Now, he's also not worried about prison. He's been there. He done that. It's not going to intimidate him in any way, the fact that he'll be in twin or Shug. Shug's there too. What are they going to do to get them to talk? There's really nothing that they can do. They don't want to. Okay. Mr. Davis's connection to the whole thing is mostly due to his own talking about it, actually, over and over. Like I said, articles, okay? And he can get convicted of this murder, even if he wasn't the trigger man. In, you know, some things we want to talk about him. They call him in the press a hardened gangster because of the length of time that he's been involved. He did get indicted on Friday in Las Vegas for the murder, and he could be charged guilty whether or not he was the person that pulled the trigger. And prosecutors are serious about this. Okay, they want this off of the cold files and done. So the Clark County District Attorney who's handling this, Steve Wolfson, he told reporters on Friday after everything that an aiding and abetting statute under Nevada law provides that if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. It's a very broad statute, and it definitely gets taken serious when it comes to murder. Now, Davis, you can see he's not no spring chicken. Davis is 60 now. And to be indicted on a charge of murder with use of a deadly weapon means no matter what the actual sentence comes through at, he could be there till the end of his life. Okay. And he is the one who said that he was in the white Cadillac with a shooter who gunned down Shakur in 1996. And he repeated that admission in interviews, in a book that came out in 2019, which prosecutors also have contained an admission that Davis acquired a gun with the intent that he was going to go after Tupak Shakur, that he was mad about what happened. Okay, so we have all of that. So basically, the prosecutors have everything they need to find him guilty under this statute. His own words are going to do him in, because they only need to know he knew about it. They only need to know he bought that gun with the intent to kill the rapper. His own testimony. He printed it. He put it out there. That was in his book, Compton Street Legend, 2019. He described himself as he himself described himself as a hardened gangster who was the leader of the Southside Compton Crips at the time of Shakur's murder. Okay. Which, you know, like I said, his nephew, Orlando Anderson Jones. Okay. I keep saying Jones, but the proper last name is Anderson. Okay. Definitely not an actor. Okay. So, Davis did try to say that the murder, like way back a few years after the murder, well, not a few years, like 2011 is not a few years after the murder. This like 15 years after the murder. He did an interview with LA Weekly, and he also not only pinned the murder on murder of his late nephew. he pinned the murder on his late nephew and Sean Combs, P. Diddy. He also then offered like $1 million to kill Tupac and his manager, Marion Suge Knight. And he said those two were interested in doing it. And prosecutors are alleging that since he's the only living member of the occupants of the white Cadillac, and that he had the gun, and he may have given the gun to passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle, or one of which was Anderson. Now they're saying that Anderson was in the car and that Marion Davis may have bought that gun with the intent to kill Tupac Shakur and gave that gun to Anderson, which would mean if he provided the murder weapon and it was Anderson who actually killed him, he's still going to go down for the murder. Even though Anderson is already gone, even though Tupac is already, well gone, 27 years, Suge Knight is not saying a damn word, and neither is the other person who was in the car, who is also dead, by the way. Okay. They said that all four, the only one alive in the vehicle is Dwayne Keefe Davis. Okay. In the back seat was Orlando Anderson. His street name was Baby Lane, and another person named Deandra, and I can't even say. Hold on a second. The last name, the person with them, they're also deceased, by the way. Like no one is still alive. Deandre Dre Smith was in the back. He's also deceased. Terrence T. Brown is his last name, and his name in quotes is T. Brown. Okay, so there was Terrence is deceased. DeAndre Dre Smith is deceased. Orlando Baby Lane Anderson is deceased. Okay, and that's the nephew. And the only one who was sitting in the front seat, supposedly not the driver, was Dwayne Keefe Davis. Okay, he's the only one alive. And the only one still alive from the BMW is Suge Knight. Okay, so we have 3 deceased people. One is supposedly the shooter, but was never charged. Orlando Anderson was never charged, okay, for the murder. Right? But there's all this talking. Now, he was talking like that in 2011. And I don't understand why they didn't do anything then. So here's the thing. Like, they're reporting this all over the place right now. Does anybody know? Has anybody heard anything that would say as to why it is being done now? Because I haven't seen anything in any of the reporting as to why now. It's frustrating. Okay. Just 2 months ago, they searched the home of Davis's wife in Las Vegas by the Metropolitan Police. Just 2 months ago. Okay. And I guess they were looking for corroboration of evidence. Okay. And the prosecution office did confirm that, yes, they did search it. And that was what, for. They were looking to corroborate evidence that they had in regards to statements they received in regards to the murder. Okay. Davis is being held without jail. He can't get out. He's due in court in about another week. The murder charge will come with a sentence enhancing because it was gang activity. And just the gang activity alone can add another 20 years to the sentence. Okay. The crucial quote that he's being charged from his book was when he said that jumping on my nephew gave us the ultimate green light to do something. And it reinvigorated the investigation into Shakur's death. But that was 2019. He also made claims that in the book, several statements, Tupac chose the wrong guy, the wrong game to play. Okay. Davis comes from a very large family. I believe he's got 12. There's 12 siblings. Okay. He's been in the Crips since 1971. It's like a lifelong career. These are from his own words in his own book. He'd been a member. He said he met Suge Knight when he was like 9 years old. They've had associations with rival gangs, like, the problem being is that Knight and Shakur, Tupac Shakur, are alleged to have associations with members of the Bloods, which was, of course, a rival gang of the Crips. Now, everybody will know, like, even if you're not, like, really knowledgeable of the gang hierarchy or the big names, there's been movies and series and lots of media mention of the feud between the Bloods and the Crips, and it's epic. And when we think about gang wars and stuff like that, that's from back in that time. That's the one. That's the one we talk about. I mean, Tupac Shakur won 6 Grammys, or actually was nominated for 6. I'm sorry. Okay. And he is considered now, especially, with him being gone, a hip hop legend. Okay. Um, they all, everyone in the industry spoke very fondly, very highly, you know, of his style and what he was putting out musically in rap and what he was doing in the industry. Well, he's gone. He was only 25 years old. And they've spent decades trying to figure this out. This murder itself has been the subject of documentaries, books, articles, essays, research, everything. Um, I mean, like Record said, they really tried to pin it down to just something that happened between East Coast, West Coast beef that was going on. Everybody in that industry was tied some way to it. Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, Eazy-E, Snoop Dogg. I love Snoop Dogg. They're all from the West. While Chris Wallace, known as Notorious B.I.G., Nas and P. Diddy and Wu-Tang Clan, they're all from the East Coast. Okay. And at the time, they were all really big in the thing. Well, these kind of beefs in the style that was going, there was always violence in, like Rabbit said, he said it's always the same thing: money, money, in contracts and deals and who's top. And then you put in the violence of all of this and how things get done in a lifestyle that, or a way of living in the tensions that were in that area and the hardness of the life in general to survive. It was just a bad mix. No. They still say to this day that Tupac Shakur's murder, and they say murder straight out, of course, he was shot 4 times. Okay. That murder was driven by this feud. That it was rooted in this feud. And then 3 decades later, it's still going to be unsolved because they have somebody in jail who says that, nope, Snoop is West Coast. Sorry, Wrecker. Sorry, I'm going to have to argue with you on that. Although you are the resident rapper, I do believe Snoop Dogg is definitely Californian, man. He's got that cool West Coast vibe. Like, he just so chill. There ain't no way Snoop Dogg is East Coast. And that ain't slander. Okay. And I'm not saying anything bad because I love Snoop, but he's so West Coast chill. Like, there's no doubt about it. That whole West Coast thing that's that. He's definitely not East Coast. I know you, I feel you must be playing me here. You just want to make sure I did my research. I'm sure. But anyway, he's definitely up there with Dre and Ice Cube and Eazy-E. Okay. He's I said the whole chat is gonna blow up on record. Poor guy. Maybe he mistyped. Give him a break. Give him a break. He probably, you know, it's hard to keep it's hard to keep the coasts and everybody like in the United States when you're from all the way on the other side of the world. I get it. Well, yeah. Yeah, he's from Long Beach, not to be associated with Long Branch, which was East Coast. Long Beach is definitely West Coast. West Coast, definitely for sure. Hey, Bliss Chris, nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. You know, yeah. Well, anyway, so that's where we are with that. We don't have like any brandy new evidence except for what the man is saying himself and the corroborating evidence that they might have caught that you might have been thinking of somebody who works with Dr. Dre, yeah, because Dre is definitely West Coast too. But it definitely Snoop Dogg. He's so chill. He's just so still. He's got a whole language of his own. The Izzy and the Shizzle and the Shizzle. I want Snoop on I want Snoop on a stoop in the worst way. He is so cool. Yeah. I know Mrs. Cassandra could educate you with like that whole thing because if 50 Cent did work with Dr. Dre, that was a whole West Coast, East Coast melding. Yes, because 50 is definitely East. But like I said, I'm not cool enough to know all of this. You all know this a lot better than I do. I'm just fascinated at the fact that 27 years later, they are actually pinning a murder on a man who actually said all of this stuff in like 2019 and 2011 and earlier. Okay, and why did it take all of this time? I want to find out what happens. I think I'd like to open up a discussion to see, are you guys interested? Because if there's a trial, I want to hear what the new evidence is that they brought forward, that why now, 27 years later, they're going to be doing this. And I think on that, I'm just going to wrap up with one little more piece of information quickly for you. Y'all remember that, you may not, but Jada Pinkett Smith is Tupac Shakur's sibling. That's a sister. And she's got some things to say about it. Um, yes, KCG, I've already gone over that part of it, but thank you very much for the article on that. Suge Knight is refusing to testify or give any other additional information. I think I will follow this, but just as a nod to the family here, Jada Pinkett Smith, she's quite contrary herself, I do. But here y'all, like, you want the real information. You want the information, and you want justice, and you just want to know what really happened. Okay, you do. You need closure. Even 27 years later, to bring all of this up with all of this old stuff and everything, I do hope that they quickly come to trial. He gets a fair trial, as he's entitled to. Mr. Davis gets a totally fair trial, and everything's come forward. But I want to know why, after 27 years, they thought it necessary to do this. I know they want to close the case, but what took so long? What was missing? You know, you know. I don't think so, KG. That's her brother. Like, I hope not. But yeah, and I want to know too. So I'm definitely going to follow it. Now, let me bring this one down, switch over for a second, because we got another very important case that I want to talk about that's going to take a little bit. And it's also, it's kind of sad. It really is. And Wrecker, I will honor it. At the end, I will bring Tupac's picture up at the very end, and we'll go out with that. I promise. I'm gonna go back to the beginning and bring up a young woman who would be in her 30s right now if she were alive. And this is our Jon Benet Ramsey, who in December of 1996 was found in a room in the basement of her parents' home during the holiday season, all tied, bound, strangled, dead. She was 7. And I have to say, this is also very tragic. Because in reading all the documents, I've covered a lot on Jon Benet. She was a beautiful baby. Okay. But there were things that I didn't necessarily agree with. I am not a supporter of pageant life for small children. I am not I've seen too many of the results of the children that have gone through it. It can do good things as far as money and college education and advancement of careers. I mean, pageant life itself. Um, but there was a lot to be said in regards to things that we're doing in the competitions and putting people at risk for all of this. But that does not mean that Jon and Pat Ramsey deserve what they got, and that is the loss of their child, and then to be completely ignored during the investigation because they were suspects. They held a grand jury. They persecuted the family. They were not released as not suspects until 2008, which, by the way, was 2 years after Patsy's demise from breast cancer. Oh, ovarian cancer, I'm sorry. Cancer. She didn't get to see justice, and she didn't get to see her name cleared as being involved in the murder of her child. The grand jury that was held for that, because the prosecution went so far as to hold a grand jury hearing with the evidence that they had, it was at least sealed for the family's protection. But part of it got leaked, and the part that got leaked said that Jon and Pat Ramsey were inadvertently responsible for putting a child in their care in danger and in the proximity of something that terrible could happen, and they should have known better. Now, they used different legal words to say it, but they said it. They didn't say she murdered her. They didn't say that they did anything on purpose, but they sure did cold shoulder that whole family during the worst period of their life. Jon Ramsey is currently 78 years old, 76. And you know, they've got a change of hands in the investigation. Some personnel changes have been made. They didn't get cleared till 2008, and they still never heard from prosecution or anybody in the evidence or anybody from the cold case. Now, if you remember, we've talked a lot about this case in the past, and I've got playlists. I mean, Jon Benet Ramsey has her own playlist on my channel, and there's a reason for it, because we've done with Jay multiple dives. We went back into it a year or so ago with the murder minions when we first started going into old cases, and we were trying to actually look at the evidence and see what we thought. Okay. This family was treated. I understand when a murder happens within a family that you do have to look at the family as suspects, okay? But you still have to also look at them as the victim's family, okay? The older brother, John Andrew, is in here. Like, they're all tormented, okay? The way they've been treated with the lack of information is being horrible. People were against them because they had money. People were against them because, Patsy was pushing the pageant lifestyle on this gorgeous child. People had a lot to say, and people forgot to put themselves in their shoes that they had lost the child. Okay. The look, I particularly chose this picture, okay, because this was in the beginning. And when I look at the two faces there, I don't see anyone that would possibly, I see nothing but grief. I see lines developing in their face. I see the corners of their mouths turned down in a sadness that probably never went away. They demonized this woman. She's not perfect. But it was in that area and at that time, it was very common for pageantry. They demonized her. And she just wanted to find out who did this to her baby. And they actually froze her out. I'm glad that things have changed hands. And I'm glad that the case is actually being looked at again and again, because they keep retesting it. They want to find out who it is. I think that there are people in law enforcement, in that area, that actually want to release the family from this grief, everybody involved, to finally put it to rest. Okay. But then there's all these mistakes that were made and all of this interference that got done. Shall we talk about John Mark Carl? who was actually extradited in 2006 from the Philippines and charged with the murder when they couldn't even place him at the scene of the crime and they didn't have enough to prosecute him. Okay, listen, they charged him and he's free. Now, the one thing that's true about this story with John Mark Carr and why he's still on the list of suspects, and even I won't take him off, is because in 1996, in December, there are 11 days that there is no physical collaboration of where this man was. He kind of insinuates he could have been there, he could have not. I mean, he's a bit of a wanker. And yeah, I don't even say that in a joking kind of way. He is actually not a very nice person. He is playing with people in regards to this. And I find it cruel and abhorrent. However, no physical evidence that he was ever there. No witness that he was anywhere in the vicinity. However, his alibis can't be corroborated either. His wife says, oh, by the way, he spent the whole holiday season with me. Can you show me a picture, ma'am? Can anybody else see him? Well, no. Okay. And his other witness, too. Same thing. He's got, other places he could have been, but there's no corroboration for it. So they can't really take him off the list, but they can't put him there either. Okay. But they went and arrested him. Okay. And made a mockery of things. Jon Benet's brother, John Andrew, he's actually really taken quite a fascination in all of this. He looks at who they think might did it. He actually has some strong opinions too about it. And he's looking at it from a psychological point. He's gotten into the bones and the meat of like FBI profiling and all of this. And he had a lot to say in regards to the second person that they keep saying, who is in jail as a pedophile and a killer. This is Gary Oliva. Okay. And he writes letters, and there are actually people who compare the writing to the letter that say it's similar, but it's not similar enough. So there are two people out there saying they think the letters match, and there are 20 more who say no way. Okay. There's also an FBI profile that says that the actual killing was rather sadistic. Okay. And that Gary Oliva, with his tendencies for art and rope, which were both present as evidence and has been fully documented. And I do see that there's correlation here. But the man himself, on being able to do it, they're not so sure. He's been in contact with a childhood friend from the beginning. And one of the biggest pieces of evidence that's getting pushed through even places like Court TV and Law and Crime is the fact that he contacted this friend, Michael Villa, on the day the body was found and said, I hurt a little girl. It could have been another little girl, but it does seem to be quite sus. Gary Oliva himself says he did it. That no one's ever pressed charges on him for it. To me, that means that when they investigated it, they found he was actually somewhere else, and that Gary Oliva, being a confirmed pedophile with a screw loose, is actually a pedophile with a screw loose and wasn't there. Okay, he did have a penchant for art supplies and stealing things, and there were paintbrushes there. He did like knots and ropes. In a knot, a very specific kind of knot was there, and a rope. Okay, but was Gary? Well, not sure. He's not been charged. And for some reason, they don't. And so I ask, kind of common sense. I know we all want to think law enforcement. What, you want to just have like the bumbling Bobby kind of attitude about it, like they don't know what they're doing? Career law enforcement people with a 27-year-old case open, they know what the hell they're doing. Yes, they do. Do you think it's a newbie that's on a 27-year-old case? Do you think it's just someone who just doesn't give a eh? Usually you go to cold case files if somebody has great skill. And if they're saying they can't charge them, there's a reason. If they haven't done it, there's got to be something. And we're just not privileged to it. You got to look past the obvious. Gary Oliver is obvious. This was slam dunk, and it's been there all along. He could have been arrested 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, if it was the case. there's something wrong. He's saying I mean, maybe it makes him feel good to think that he was the one. He was fascinated. He was arrested for something else, and he had a picture of Jon Benet on him, and they opened up questioning with him. Yes, they did, you know. And the friend has gone with them with testimony about all of this. So we'll see what happens. Okay. But they're still testing DNA. And that's what I wanted to talk about. I want to look more into it, but they're actually, the ancestral DNA is going to help clean some old cases, just like when DNA profiles started becoming more popular. Yes, because you'll remember back in 1996, they had all of these samples, and thankfully they are preserving and did not test every single sample, which is very important, because once they put it in through processing, it's very hard with the new technology to use the old DNA that's already been processed through that again. But they do have the records, and they do have things that they can correlate, and they have much different ways of testing everything now, okay, and more advanced, and they're probably going to get an answer. Okay, they can eliminate people. John, this is the part of the story that I really want to focus on. John Ramsey, it's 78 years old, got his first answer from the state where his daughter was murdered, that he's been considered part of that crime all the way up until 2008. And he has run his own private investigation from the beginning because he was closed out. He wrote to the governor, and he finally got a letter back that said, no, I will take it serious. And he was appalled, the governor, to find out that John Ramsey had never heard from the state in all of these years. They're still actively investigating. Now, they've had meetings since then. In 2023 has been the most productive for actually the state and John Ramsey to work together. John Ramsey brought forward all of his own private investigation and gave it to the cold case file detectives to compare. They said they're going to look at it and they're going to get to it and see if there's anything new in there that they didn't already have. But they're still working it from their files, okay? They tested like the waistband a few years ago for the DNA waste on the waistband of Jon Benet's pajamas. But the other thing is that two statements kind of void. Mark Carr says he violated her. There was no violation found on the body, okay? And Olivia says like the same thing about it being out, but the DNA does not match Olivia. And that should be noted. They have DNA from the exterior of her pajamas and lots of things, and it doesn't match either one of them. And they have their DNA. So the conspiracy theorists, what had happened to her could not have happened without leaving DNA behind. If Mark Oliver did this, his DNA would be somewhere there. If Mark Carr did this, his DNA would be there. It's not, but they have lots of DNA. Okay, Juju says, can't they compare the old test to the new? I don't understand why they call it. They can compare them because they do that signature with chromosomes and all, and scientifically they match them up in the computers. It has a lot to do with the computer systems they use, the type of testing that they use, and the advanced technology. Yes, they can compare all of the old stuff to what they find new. They're hoping with the new stuff that they can actually get more because there are more people in the databases, and they don't have to just use CODIS anymore, which CODIS is just criminals that have been entered into there, or for some criminal, some type of offense that happened. So this way they can use family DNA genealogy so that they can compare and eliminate things, and there's a broader field. Yep. It seems that law enforcement I will agree that it did seem law enforcement was more looking to save face John Ramsey was angry. Patsy Ramsey was angry. They were a well-liked family in the area. They had money, they had connections. And it looked like they were in the mode of COA, like cover it. And especially when we hear about the investigation. If you go back to some of my older videos, you will hear how the investigations actually went and how many people were actually in that house, how long it took, how many different departments were all there before they took any DNA or did anything. And that the basement had actually been searched prior and they didn't find her, but they found her after. And they found it. And so there was a lot to be said. And once they started getting attacked, they just clamped down and it was it. And then once they started looking at the family, um, and that's what part that breaks my heart, because they did release them as suspects in 2008. So why were they not giving regular updates to Jon Ramsey, even after his wife had passed? I mean, are they going to find anything before he passes? And that's all he wants. And he's sharing all of the information with them. This is the best conversations that they've been having. I won't say they're good, but he does have hope. He is releasing statements and interviews to say that they finally have hope that something will move forward in the case. Yep. Mm. The media shouldn't even report if the DNA didn't match. That is what Olivia exactly. I think he's feeding off the whole thing to tell you, which is something that they do. And he was obsessed with her as a pageant star, you know. Did the mom's handwriting analysis ever make a difference? Not enough to charge her and not enough to compare. And here's the thing with handwriting analysis. For everyone you find that says it's good, you'll find someone who says it's not. It's the same thing with body language. And I know everybody kind of leans towards that there's a little bit to that, whether things do. Yeah, we do get nervous and we have tics and all when we lie and things like that. But for every person that looks at body language, you'll have one that says this and one that says that. We have to list it as an unconfirmed science and not actually materialistic enough to use as concrete evidence, which is why they don't use it in court, just like lie detectors. Those things go off when you're trying to manipulate the system, but you can do it with so many different variables, whether you're lying or whether you're just nervous, having a panic attack, because who the hell wants to be in a police station with a machine hooked up to you, or, things like that. Uh, it's unreliable. Unreliable systems cannot be used as evidence if it's just not accurate. So the body language thing, the handwriting analysis, they can all point to leads, the things you need to look at, but can they be entered as evidence? Nope. Nope. Just not solid enough. I mean, that possibly could be entered if there wasn't really overruled like the lie detector machines are, but they sometimes get mentioned as to why somebody looked at something or something was indicated and why they went in a certain direction if it gets challenged. But that's about it. Um, Paula reminds us that Boulder, where this happened, is a safe, affluent area. This crime was too specific to be random. Not blaming the parents, but a lot didn't add up. And I hear that. And let me just add to that. What they are, one of the theories that was out there that I heard quite a bit was that this was related to jealousy. This was related to the attention that Jon Benet was getting in the pageant area, and that Patsy was getting all of the contracts and pushing through, and that other children were enabled, and that it could have been something like that. I mean, we've had cheerleader mom murders before. We've had this, that, and the other thing. There was conspiracy that someone paid someone to come and do this to Jon Benet, or they paid someone to kidnap her so that she couldn't perform in the pageant that was coming up, but that the person that they hired, they weren't aware that they also had a penchant to violence towards small girls, and that it was just a maelstrom of coincidental connections that couldn't be stopped. Okay, but yeah, I mean, there's lots of that. I don't think that another mother of a child would do this to another child. Well, you don't know. People, the one thing I know is people are shite. There's good people and there's shite people, and that even good people can be shite depending on the circumstance. And when I mean shite, you know what I'm saying, right? Yeah. Oh, compared to the girl from Utah, that guy is it. Yes, I see. Hmm. And I don't like to do these kinds of cases, you know that. But this one, yep, that's it. And a lot of people do. A lot of people think it's a jealous mom competitor. I think they went to another home that they had farther away, KCG. If you ask if the family moved away, they were treated really poorly. Yes, I do believe they do. As a matter of fact, they were actually chastised because it was so horrible right afterwards that they went away on their standard holiday all together and holed up in a cabin somewhere. And they were ridiculed and persecuted for it. What were they supposed to do? They were available, like to talk to people by phone, whatever, but where were they supposed to stay in the same house? Juju, this is true. This didn't happen. They did not lock it down immediately. It was unbelievable. It was almost as bad as the murder investigation with all of those everybody walking all over the scene, and it was horrible. And they got a lot of criticism for it. You know, and I don't want to slam L. Here's what I'll say. They are now working fervently under new management and new direction with the case. And I give them great credit for that. It is not easy to take a 27-year-old case on. It's not easy to take a 20-year-old case. It's not easy to take any case from others who did the work and actually have to look at it with the critical eye of where all the mistakes were made, actually own that because you now represent them. Let's be clear. It doesn't matter that Officer A was not the one on the scene that made all the mistakes. 10 years later, when he has to talk to Jon Ramsey, he represents the mistakes and he has to go hat in hand and try to make it better. Okay. That's not easy for them to do. So those that are doing it, I give them great credit because you know what? They're still working the case. At least right now this year, they still say they're working the case pretty fervently. Okay. But for some reason, they buried this case for quite some time. And it could be the amount of mistakes that were made. It could be political, as like, well, if you were going to put my department up there with all this ridicule in such a high profile case, I'll never get, voted in. So let's just deal with that in 6 months or 8 months or a year. And then the next guy does the same thing. And the next guy does the same thing. So now you've got this like rolling event of everybody just doing COA, covering their ass, or moving it forward or burying it deep. And it made it very contentious. But I have to say, my heart still is with this family to know that Patsy went to her grave without being released from being a suspect in her own child's murder. That breaks my heart. To know that Jon Ramsey knows that, deals with that every day, and still hadn't heard from the investigation. He had his own investigation, and now he's hat in hand willing. Now, he was mad at them for the longest time. He did his own investigation because he was pissed off that they were doing what they were doing, and he wasn't sharing things. He wasn't, but they didn't come and ask him either. All right. They didn't willingly give them up anything either. And he was taking his shots. He was taking his shots at everything that happened. And I think a grieving family can. We see that going on with Kohlberger now, right? We see a grieving family out there saying, I don't get enough information. I need to know this. I need to know that. Like taking their shots. We're watching them grieve in public. And I don't think we can judge them too harshly because we're not in their shoes. The day that we can say that we would do better in that situation is the day we do, and not before. And I just caution us all to remember that. We all think we know what we would do. None of us do. Let me get back to some of these comments here. Tony says there are a lot of things about how they reported JB's disappearance that don't add up, though. And this is true. There is. There's the time frame. There's the checking of the basement in the, people in the house that were helping with the searching. There's where they found things. It's all very sketch. And I encourage everybody. I mean, you know me. I'm not one to go like promoting myself like crazy. Yes, I do promos and stuff, but like I do encourage you to go look at the playlist on Jon Benet, because for one reason, and I'm going to promote my friend Jay, who helped me with this and who has a unique and different way of looking at it than myself, and I admire him so much. So the balance of the two, and you go and you look at it, there's so many more things came up, and he helped keep us in line with what the FBI was doing and how they look at things and what could and could not be inferred from certain types of evidence. And we also did a whole play-by-play on down like who we actually thought it might be. And I actually thought that the electrician was more involved than anybody thought. And KCG, I'm very sorry that that happened. That's all I'm going to say for now on that. I feel for you. Grace, I can tell you when we say things like, why wouldn't they call their friends? Why wouldn't they do this? Lots of reasons. Who knows what to do if your child is murdered? They, I'm sure you're so upset that the first thing is not, I've got like 5 minutes to call the police. I better dot the I's, cross the T, and make sure I tell my neighbor and call my best friend. I don't think they knew what they were doing, to tell you the truth. When I look at that investigation, and I think you'll see that through the thing, you go through and you see everything they did with the timeline. And I do have a few articles I'm going to link. One of them I'll put down here now if the link is short enough. This one from Court TV gives you like a timeline. That's the latest one. And the reason I'm putting this one here is like they did this in January of 2023. So it goes like pretty far. But I'm hoping that I can, once I find one that updates all the time, because there's usually somebody somewhere doing that. But you also have to remember it was the holidays. This is the morning of Christmas that they discovered the body. There had been in that house they had been to so many Christmas parties. There was like a rolling thing. There was hundreds of people around. There's just too much to say. I can't imagine that after all of that, and the very next morning, like they're gonna no, I know you're not, Grace. Like, you know, from now on, I'll just pull up your comments and don't mention your name, because I absolutely am not saying anything like that. I'm saying a lot of people say that kind of stuff. And like, why wouldn't, like, there are reasons we can't really know. Like, nobody knows how they would act. And not even like the police did look at them as suspects. And I just feel for them, because it's that kinds of stuff. Like, you didn't call soon enough. You didn't do this soon enough. They had no physical DNA or any actions to actually tie her to the murder, except for that was their child and they were in the house. And the things that were, the letter was written with products from the house, the pen, the paper, everything was from the house, everything. So everything kind of tied up to, well, someone, what all of that says is not that it was someone who lives in the house, but that someone was in the house and had access to areas of the house that somebody who just broke into a basement wouldn't have. That they had free roaming, they were undetected and free roaming through that house at some time. And so, believe me, I'm not picking on anybody, you know. I just know I don't think I would be thinking about calling my friends about this. As a matter of fact, I know me personally, just the style that I am, I get terrible news about my relatives or something happens. I don't pick up the phone and call all of those closest to me. Sometimes the first person that finds out is just the first person who speaks with me, and so it's really hard, like, for me to say that there's like a normal way to react to tragedy about friends and family and anything like that. Some of us clam up, some of us open up, some of us don't even register it. But that doesn't mean you don't care, you know? Exactly, Juju. That's a very valid statement. In also, everyone's rational and irrational is different because what's normal for us could be abnormal for somebody else. Well, because we all look at it from our personal perspectives. But remember that word personal. That word personal means you, which means that's only your perspective. And it's unkind of us to put our perspective and label somebody because of it. We have to acknowledge that this is how we would do it and actually still give the grace that we don't fully understand, that we fully understand that everyone is not going to do it the same way, you know. If mainstream media was anywhere in the way it is like right now, um I can't even imagine what would have happened to this family, because as it as it is now, they were so ostracized from the community. It was crazy. Hey, Megs. I didn't you snuck in. I see. I'm very behind in chat, love. I'm so happy to see you. I hope you're doing okay. Say hi to mom. Yeah, yeah. But yep. I'd be going in the police car with them and spend the night at the police station if it were my baby. I'd be looking at everything. Yes, but they didn't. What they did is close circles and stayed all together and just clammed up. It is what the family did. Remembering that during times of intense stress and tragedy, most people do not act rationally at all, or how they think they would, or normally how people think they are, you know? Yep. If social media was as intense as it is now, it would have been solved. Yes, but I don't know if they'd actually have the murderer. I'm sure they would have actually done something to the parents. As vile as it was back then, I'm sure, since it took till 2008 to release them as suspects, I'm pretty sure that if mainstream media with the pushing and all that they would have done, they would have probably had a trial. Whether or not they would have been found guilty, I don't know. But they did hold a grand jury, which means they were trying to indict. They were looking to see if they had enough, and they didn't, according to the grand jury. But that was all sealed, and only parts of it have been leaked. So who knows what else they had, you know, you know. But yeah, I would think that the way that it would have been sensationalized, somebody would have did something like terrible. But this was the last picture that I wanted to put up again for Jon Benet and her family. Because from the beginning, as hard as everybody was on that family, if you look at the pictures, and I just want to say what I see, and all everyone's entitled to their opinion in all on this, and I do welcome you to go to that playlist and please look at the original stuff that I did on it, and then how Jay and I tried to take it apart later, and then we did a whole new relook at the evidence with everybody involved to see who they would have thought that it would have been and who they would have focused on, and we used it as a type of a group kind of looking at it to see like how to look at evidence and how they may have been looking at the evidence and how it can be looked at so many different ways. And it was really eye-opening for me, and I learned a lot from Jay, and I think that you all can benefit if you love this kind of stuff from looking at his perspective of it. It was eye-opening for me at the least. All right. So the reason I put this picture up is, again, when I look at that family, they say in that picture that Jon Benet, I saw so many comments about this picture of grief that Jon Benet it is that Patsy is smiling. This one is from not right away early on, but a few years, and I don't see a smile. I still see the mouth turned down in the corners. I see lowered eyes. I see wrinkles near those eyes. I see people who haven't slept well. Um, I see people who have lost a child. And when I look at Jon Ramsey now, I still see the same look. I don't see a smile. They say she's smirking. I see grief, you know? And this picture I'm showing of Jon Benet was school that year. Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is how the media treated her. So the reason I'm glad I brought this up, because we're all talking about mainstream media on and off now on my channel. And I think she looks devastated. I think she looks like she put herself together in just because it's habit. That the only reason her hair is done and her makeup is on is because that's how you do things, where she's from and how she was raised. You know, they picked on her for matching her shoes to her outfit or looking semi decent in public. And just, you know, it might be a little bit late because you're gone. She left everyone in 2006, but she deserved a little bit better than that, just because she was her mother. Okay, and she went through the accusations of law enforcement, and then they released her as a suspect. But the media hasn't, and neither has anybody in that area. Well, anyway, look at the hey, look at the trees. How are you? I see that comment. Hold on, let me see. Um, let me bring this down to talk for a minute, and then I'll bring up my list. I think if there's no more questions on Jon Benet, I'll be wrapping up in the next couple of minutes. We'll talk about a little bit of channel stuff. You can ask questions, you know. Look at the trees has one here for me. Will you be doing an LISK stream anytime soon? Yes, I will. The Long Island serial killer. We're talking, you know, about the architect. Yes. Rex Harriman. Yes, I will be. But there's, you know, it's really hard to get the actual physical documents. I'm getting everything the best I can. I do know someone from the area that is actually a lawyer who's looking into it. I'm looking to working with them. Um, uh, Looking to get more information with them and check the legal aspects of it and what's going on. And I'll be doing one very soon. I did do a little bit on it prior, and it is on a regular Tuesday, I believe, and you'll see his picture. Usually whoever I'm talking about, their picture is on the thumbnail, but it will be in the true crime and legal update playlist. I believe it's a few weeks back when it first broke. Yeah, I didn't see a smile. Man, I feel like a conspiracy theorist when I say mainstream media is not a reliable source anybody. Actually, you're not. Actually, that's probably a truer statement than that. You know, I, I, mm, mm, it, I don't think you're the conspiracy theorist. I think mainstream media kind of likes those people. They're just taking more in their inbox from them lately. I really do. Anna, I have been also, because it's, you know, there were so many bodies after it first broke when Valerie, you know, when they found the body that led to all the other bodies. And it's such a heartbreaking story. I did actually look at the trees. I did bring it out first, and we talked about all of the bodies, even the ones that because he's being labeled the Long Island serial killer, but they're only labeling him to the 4 bodies. But there are so many other victims for the Long Island serial killer on that beach there, and they all seem to be related in some way, you know. So it is fascinating, you know. Unfortunately, we've got too many areas with all these kind of bodies. We've got that lake that was draining with all the bodies in there. We've got all the people in the north, the indigenous women that have been, you know, victimized and taken away, all of the missing women going away. We've got a huge human trafficking issue all over the world, here in the United States too, although nobody talks about it. There's There's so much to talk about. I can't talk about every single case, but I am definitely going to go with the Long Island serial killer. Whether it be Rex Harriman for all of them or just on these four, we're going to cover this part since they've made the arrest. We are definitely, it's gone legal now, and we're definitely going to be covering that. You know what? That's a strong theory there, and that has been said over and over. A lot of people are saying that, and I can understand why you say that. Look at the trees. I think he was at it in different areas for a long time, and I don't think these were his first. Didn't appear that way. Doesn't appear that way at all. Okay, still questioning the baby and the guy. The baby is DNA matched to another victim right there that they found, another body, one of the ones with the tattoos. It was either peaches or cherries. Forgive me. I think it was peaches, but I'm not sure. And they only identified them by the tattoo. And one of those women was the mother of the baby that was found. And only part of the woman was found at one part and then another part and then up there. And the young man that they found was cross-dressing at the time and may have presented as a woman before he was killed. So they are still saying it's connected. He was very effeminate, very slight. He was small. He fit the body style, although he was a man. And they're saying the Long Island serial killer has a type, and it's petite, female. Okay. That's my brief update on that. Okay. I did, hold on, I got to do something here. I keep my word. I did have one more picture that I'm going to put up of Tupac because I didn't get to put that one up at the end. And some people wanted to go out with it. And record, I told you I'd put it up, and there it is. Just going to look at comments a little bit. Paula, you grew up at Gilgo Beach. Gilago Beach, right? Is it Gilago, Gilago, Gilago? I cannot pronounce this. Somebody help me. Paula, you grew up there. Put it in the chat. Help a bear out because I mispronounce this all the time. Doesn't have the congestion of Jones Beach. So sad to see such a beautiful beach desecrated. It's a very long highway. It's marshy, beachy stuff on both sides. Like I can see why they use it, especially with the way that they found the bodies is because somebody drowned there, fell, hit their head, and drowned in the swampy, beachy area. Like horrible, horrible. Actually drowned. She is not believed to be a victim, although in a way, I don't know how they could say that since she was running away from someone and hiding from someone at the time. So whether or not he killed her, he may not have laid hands on her, but he's directly responsible for this demise, whoever was chasing her for sure. Yeah. This is true. I'm going to leave that up there. Yeah. Gilgo. Okay. Thank you very much, Paula. I'll never say it bad again. Gilgo. Thank you. I appreciate it, Paula. I do. And on that, if you guys don't have anything else, I'm going to leave with saying bye, Tupac. I hope these grown-ass men come to their senses and realize their code can do good too. Because, truth, right? And family. Let everybody rest. Let Tupac rest, We hope to get the true story. We just want to know what happened. And if they feel that they got to actually put the charges on this man who they know didn't really pull the trigger, but he's responsible in some way, then fine, close your case. But still a 25-year-old man with everything in front of him. He's gone, and his family deserves justice just like everyone. He does too. Yeah. On that, good night, everybody. I do hope you all have a great night. I will see you all tomorrow with some more legal stuff. Okay. And hopefully. Also on Friday, well, first I'll say Thursday. Tomorrow is Wednesday. We're going to do political review. On Thursday, we're going to do the challenge. Now, I don't know what channel it's going to be on, but I do that with Patrick the Great, aka he's been outed as, yes, Culture Cat, formerly Boldy Cats, Conspiracy Cats. Yeah, that guy. The guy with the voice, the guitars, the funny, snarky English sense of humor. Him. And J.L. Warren from Weekend Horror in A Bridge to Divide. We know him too. And our own Charlie Walsh. Yeah. We're going to do that on Thursday. And this week, it's going to be comedy scene, okay, which I could use the break. This is also serious, and I'm looking forward to doing a comedy scene that wasn't from a comedy or a rom-com. In other words, a scene that ended up to be hysterical and wasn't written that way. It wasn't supposed to be. And those sometimes are our funniest things. So I'm going to have a good time with that on Thursday. And on Friday, I've got Scientology and Scientology and Scientology and Scientology for you. There have been some movements in law cases. Leah Remini, for one, the 3 Jane Doe civil suit for harassment against Miscavige, the church, and Masterson. There's been some statements issued. There's also been some countries that have weighed in on the Church of Scientology itself and whether or not it's a church. And I'm going to give you all the information on Friday. So I look forward to that one. That one will be in the evening. So everybody, have a great night. Thanks for being here. You guys contributing in the chat the way that you do with the questions and having the conversation. This is what makes all of the research and getting the information out here beneficial and pleasant for me, because this is what I wanted to do. Talk to other people who had an interest in it like this, and just go back and forth on theory and legal and just get the good information out there and have really good discussion, So thanks for that. You guys cheer me on. I greatly appreciate it. So anyone I didn't get to say hi personally in the chat, I hope you know I do appreciate you, every single one of you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because it does help to get into the algorithm. I'm a YouTuber now, no doubt about it. It might be a hobby, but here I am day after day doing the YouTubey things. So please help me out, and you do the YouTubey things too, okay? Like, help a bear out. Do what you can. And I'll see you all when I see you, which will be tomorrow, hopefully. Night.